Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Octavius. The Octavius is by far one of the creepiest ghost ships to ever drift across the seven seas. The story begins in 1761, when the Octavius was docked at a port in London. It was loaded with cargo destined for China, then set sail with a full crew. The ship arrived in China, unloaded its cargo, and set sail back to British shores. The issue is that the captain didn't seem to be thinking straight. The weather was so unbelievably warm in China that he thought they would make better time if they went through the Northwest Passage. At the time, this was a voyage that had never been accomplished, and what the captain didn't realize was that the warmth in China held absolutely no bearing on the temperature or weather conditions near the Arctic Circle. Nobody saw the Octavius again until 1775. A whaling ship by the name Herald spotted the beaten-up vessel drifting off the coast of Greenland. The whalers searched the ship for any possible survivors, but didn't find any. The deck was empty, and the whole place looked deserted. At least that was until they went down below. The entire 28-man crew was discovered frozen and dead in their quarters. And in the captain's cabin, the captain still sat at his great desk, one pen in his hand, and the logbook flattened in front of him. Everyone appeared to have been frozen suddenly, within a matter of just seconds. It was such a ghoulish sight that the whalers grabbed the logbook and ran away. The last recorded position in the book placed the Octavius 250 miles north of Barrow, Alaska. They had clearly gotten stuck and frozen in the ice. But even more mysterious is that after the whalers left, nobody ever saw the Octavius again. Number 9. World War I Mystery Shipwreck. A fascinating Royal Navy ship was just discovered sunken off the western coast of Scotland. This ship has been missing ever since the days of World War I. Marine archaeologists just found it by using sonar technology. The vessel is called the HMS Jason, and it was a mine-sweeping gunboat for the Royal Navy, but it sank after it missed one of the mines it was supposed to be sweeping, took a major explosion to its hull, and was ripped apart. Of the ship's 91 crew members, 30 were lost in the tragedy on April 3, 1917. The entire boat went down in less than 5 minutes. And even though the location of the wreckage has been known for decades, a seabed survey in 2011 found no trace of it. It wasn't until Kevin Heath with Sula Diving and his team took it upon themselves to really track this ship down that they finally found it after 5 years. It's sitting about 305 feet deep next to a large rock. So covered in marine life, it hardly looks like a boat anymore. Number 8. Santo Cristo de Burgos. In the year 1693, a ship set sail from the Philippines filled to the brim with silk and beeswax. Its destination was Mexico. However, the Spanish galleon, called the Santo Cristo de Burgos, was never seen by anyone again. It mysteriously vanished, and its soggy, decaying timbers were only recently discovered off the northern coast of Oregon. It was just a few weeks ago that the remains of this mysterious ship were taken out from sea caves near Manzanita, but they are hardly even that. The only thing the researchers found were long pieces of wood that had probably been part of the ship's hull. But to any ordinary person walking along the beach, they would just think these were giant chunks of driftwood. Until now, very few Manila galleon shipwrecks have been found due to the danger of the Pacific currents. The rest of this ship is still hidden somewhere offshore, sunk beneath the waves with its rich cargo still waiting to be delivered. Most historians believe the ship probably took a wrong turn on its way to Mexico, wound up off the Oregon coast, and broke itself against the craggy coastline. People in Oregon have been finding chunks of beeswax on the beach for years. Beeswax was actually one of the biggest trade commodities for Spain's colonies. Beeswax candles were needed for light, and of course, Catholic services, which were used to gradually convert the native people into obedient Christian citizens. Number 7. The Mary Celeste. When it comes to spooky ghost ships, the Mary Celeste is the big one, up there with the Flying Dutchman. She was spotted 400 miles east of the Azores on December 5, 1872. The British crew of the Dei Gratia found the Mary Celeste adrift 8 days after she had left New York City. The Mary Celeste was supposed to have already arrived in Genoa, Italy. The captain of the Dei Gratia was extremely worried for the safety of the crew, and so he boarded the Mary Celeste to investigate. What he found has been an intriguing mystery for 150 years. There was not a single crew member on board the ship, and yet all their belongings were there. The cargo of industrial alcohol was still intact, and there was enough food and water to last another 6 months. To this day, we have no idea what happened between New York City and the Azores. There was no sign of a struggle, only a single lifeboat was missing, and the ship was fully operational. There was no reason for anyone to leave, never mind to leave without taking their clothing or enough food. And why would they pile onto a tiny lifeboat when they could have taken multiple lifeboats? Some say mutiny, some say pirates, and some even say those sailors were beamed aboard an alien spaceship. And now for number 6. But first, it's shout-out time! I want to say a big thank you to Becca Buckner and Axel Herrera for supporting this channel. Thanks, guys! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about haunted shipwrecks and ghost stories. Number 6. The Gloucester. The Gloucester was one of the most famous ships in the 17th century. But 340 years ago, on one fateful day, this royal ship sank off the English coast while carrying James Stewart, who would go on to become the King of England. The sinking of the ship was surprisingly dramatic. The boat hit a sandbank on May 6, 1682, after James Stewart, who had been the Lord High Admiral, got into an argument with the captain over control of the ship. This argument caused them to run aground, which then resulted in the deaths of hundreds of crew members. James Stewart only survived by the hair on his chin, after he waited until the very last moment to abandon ship. The Gloucester was finally discovered in 2007 in the exact same place it sank. It was still stuck in the sand, with most of its hull submerged in the sediment and a massive split down its keel. The bell of the ship was recovered immediately, an artifact made back in 1681. And since then, multiple expeditions have gone down to investigate the creepy remains of what was once the most famous ship in all of Britain. Number 5. The SS Baychimo. The SS Baychimo was the unsinkable ghost ship. It was built by the Swedish company Lindholmens and first set sail in 1914. It was a beast of a vessel, with a giant steel hull 230 feet long and powered by a triple steam engine. The ship was originally used as a trading vessel for journeys through the Baltic Sea, mainly sailing between Hamburg and Sweden. Then, after the First World War, she was given to the British government as part of Germany's reparations. The ship went into the service of the Hudson's Bay Company in 1921 and made trips between Britain and Canada, mostly collecting fur pelts. It was in 1931 when the Baychimo got trapped in a surprise blizzard off the northern coast of Alaska. The ship became stuck in the ice, the crew was forced to abandon ship, and they set up camp near the town of Barrow for the winter. In November of that same year, the ship vanished. Somehow, it had gotten itself free of the ice and drifted nearly 100 miles south. The vessel was written off, but it was a little premature. The ship turned out to still be in fantastic shape. It was spotted almost 500 miles east later that year, and the year after seen again floating near the shores of Alaska. In the 4 decades that followed, numerous sightings of the Baychimo were reported all around the Arctic. Explorers would even board the ship, look around, and then leave her to drift. The final sighting came in 1969, approximately 38 years after she was first abandoned. Since then, nobody knows what became of the Baychimo. Maybe you've seen it? Number 4. The Zebello. Italy was recently hit by their worst drought in 70 years. The lack of rain continued to wreak havoc on the European country, and it also did something surprising. It revealed the ghostly wreckage of the Zebello, a huge barge that was used for transporting wood during World War II. It sank in 1943 in the River Po, a gigantic river which goes all the way from the Cottian Alps to the Adriatic Sea. The ship has actually been visible for the last few years. It was only now that the drought completely decimated the water levels that the whole thing became exposed. Northern Italy went without rain for 110 days, while snowfall dropped by 70%. While the entire ship has been exposed, it's not quite as exciting as it could be. The barge is totally broken, with very little left to the imagination. To be honest, it looks more sad than it does haunted. Number 3. Stranded at sea. In a bizarre twist of events, a boat was abandoned in 2017 with the crew still on board. It happened when a shipping company in the United Arab Emirates ran into some financial issues. They were forced to abandon their oil tanker off the coast of Dubai, while leaving the crew stranded at sea. According to CBC News, the crew was stuck without being paid and with no way home. Believe it or not, those men remained on the ship for over 3 years. They had no money, no way to get themselves back to their own country, and were left sitting in this giant oil tanker like a bunch of modern-day castaways. One of these stranded crew members was a man named Ne Win from Myanmar. He had been hired to work as the chief engineer on the MT Eba. He started working on the tanker like much of the crew in 2017, just before Alco Shipping Services ordered them to anchor 8 miles off the coast of Dubai. By 2018, that company had been blacklisted by the Indian government, and later that year they ceased all communication with the crew on board. Months turned into years, and Ne Win and the rest of the crew were still stuck on that boat. It wasn't until 2021 that a storm broke the anchor and pushed the boat onto a public beach in Al Quwain. That was when the crew came on shore for the first time in 3.5 years. Forced to do something, the company finally agreed to accept responsibility and pay about 70% of the unpaid wages to the workers. Still, they had been forced to live in unimaginable conditions on a forsaken ghost ship only 8 miles from civilization. Number 2. The HMS Resolute. In 1845, Captain John Franklin left England with 2 ships in search of the Northwest Passage, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror. The vessels weren't found until 2014, and the crew was never seen alive again. They got stuck in the ice and everyone died. In the years following, many ships went searching for the missing seamen and their boats, but they had no luck. One of the biggest search operations was in 1852. The HMS Resolute was among these ships, originally a merchant ship that had been refitted for Arctic exploration. It was part of a 5-ship squadron that left England and went into the Canadian Arctic looking for John Franklin's doomed expedition. Even though the Resolute didn't find Franklin's crew, she did find a different vessel that had gotten stuck in the ice. 3 years earlier, the HMS Investigator had also gone in search of the lost expedition and gotten stuck. In fact, the HMS Resolute got stuck too, as did 2 other ships on the expedition. The Resolute was abandoned, and the survivors never returned to collect it, and the ship managed to free itself from the ice and then drift away. She was discovered years later in 1855, over 1,200 miles from where she had originally gotten stuck. Captain James Buddington split his crew in half and sailed the ghost ship to Connecticut. It went on to serve in the British Navy until being retired and demolished in 1879. But when it was destroyed, the British government used its timbers to create a pair of desks. One of these was presented to President Rutherford Hayes in 1880 and is still sitting in the Oval Office to this very day. Number 1. Adrift for 9 years. A ship that went missing in 2009 in the Pacific Ocean randomly appeared in the Indian Ocean 9 years later. It was last seen floating off the coast of Taiwan, but there was nobody on it, and nobody seemed to take responsibility for it. So it was just left alone to drift through the ocean. The ship, named Sam Ratulangi PB 1600, was then seen nearly a decade later just off the coast of Myanmar. It had struck a sandbar and gotten stuck. Local fishermen boarded the ghost ship but couldn't find anyone. When the officials came to inspect the ship, they had no idea where it had come from. There was no crew, no cargo, and no evidence of what happened. We still don't know where the ship originally came from. Some reports claim the ship was on its way to be dismantled in Bangladesh when it accidentally got separated and then started drifting. But that's as far as the records go. Thanks for watching! Would you rather get stuck on a ghost ship or stranded on a desert island? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!